Reactions of couples to fights. 5 interesting responses. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. This video is all about the ways couples react to the fights. Every marriage is different. Every couple is different. Likewise, reactions of couples to the fights is also different. Do you know the reactions of couples towards fights in marriage is quite interesting and fascinating? The way you react to your fights with your spouse decides how much of an impact your argument is going to have in your marriage. Yes, your reactions to your fights with your spouse can never be underestimated. Do you know I keep my mouth shut when my husband is unreasonably angry with me? My friend told me, "Don't you feel angry when your husband fights unreasonably with you?" I asked my friend with bewilderment. Look, when I say my husband fights unreasonably with me, you should understand that he never sees my viewpoint. So I let him shout. I never let his words hurt me because I don't really listen to him, my friend smiled. Well, her reaction to her fights with her husband was quite interesting and fascinating. Do you know your reactions to fights with your spouse has a telling effect in your marriage? I feel angry and resentful when my spouse argues with me. So I fight with him or her. I think my reaction is the most natural thing in the world. I don't see how my reactions will affect my marriage, you might well say. Yours is a sweeping statement. Your reactions to arguments with your spouse are not always the same. You react differently to different situations and your spouse does the same. There are 2 angles in an argument between couples. The angle of the one who argues and the angle of the one who reacts. The one who argues is the accuser and the one who reacts is the deciding factor of how the argument is going to shape up. Hey, why are you gaping at things you're not going to buy? Are you going to stay here forever? Come on, it's getting late. The yelling sound of a man's voice made me turn to look at him. I was shopping in a mall and a man was yelling loudly at his wife in front of many gaping spectators. It was interesting to watch the reaction of the wife to the arrogant anger of her husband. She had a contemptuous look in her face which conveyed the clear message, "I just do not care even if you shout and create a scene. I'm not at all bothered. I'll only do my own thing." The wife continued her window shopping as if her husband was non-existent. Hers was a disdainful reaction to an uncalled for comment from her husband. So, arguments and your reaction to it decides the range of your fight. Arguments with your spouse becomes aggressive or mild according to the way you react to it. When you react calmly to the anger of your spouse, your relationship is back to normal within hours. But when your arguments and reactions become hot-blooded and hostile, it makes your married life tense and oppressive. Unsympathetic and aggressive arguments and equally angry reactions are like high tides. It is very destructive and very disastrous to your marriage. Shall we look at the varied reactions of couples towards fights in marriage? Reaction number 1 is self-righteous reaction. When your spouse argues with you, you invariably retaliate with statistical anger. You pinpoint the mistakes of your spouse, quoting the number of times he or she has started the fights. You reel out the scenario of your previous arguments with uncanny memory. Your intention is to prove yourself right and your spouse wrong. In your self-righteous reaction, you never consider even once that you might be in the wrong. You continue a venomous reaction for days to prove that you are in the right. You will never let go your spouse as you feel that you have done nothing wrong. You want an explanation from your spouse. You want an apology. You want total surrender from your spouse. This self-righteous reaction to arguments leads to intense bitterness and resentment in your relationship. Reaction number 2 is resentment reaction. Whenever there are arguments between you, you feel oppressed that you are unable to express your thoughts to your spouse. The uneasiness and apprehensiveness you feel to share your emotions with your spouse make you store loads of resentment against him or her. When your spouse argues with you, you do not argue back. You do not openly react to your spouse, but hide your emotions within yourself. This does not mean you're meek and submissive. It just means you suppress your bitter feelings against your spouse within yourself, as you do not want needless confrontation between you. Such suppressed reactions are always volcanic. You well know that you will erupt with vengeance anytime. Reaction number 3 is indifferent reaction. Consistent arguments between you make you feel that there is no use reacting to your spouse. So, you close your ears and keep your mouth clamped whenever there's an argument between you. You become so indifferent towards your spouse that you no longer care about what he or she says. You do not feel like reacting to the anger of your spouse, as you have mentally drifted too far away from him or her. When you withdraw away from your spouse emotionally, it makes your married life lifeless, worthless, dull, and tedious. Your spouse feels that he or she might as well be arguing with a wall, as you do not react at all. The rift between you has become that wide. You're indifferent to what your spouse argues about, as you have mentally become detached and emotionally withdrawn. When your mind draws a shutter down to the emotions of your spouse, you're never bothered about what he or she really wants to convey through his or her argument. Indifferent reaction towards your spouse is always a massive marriage wrecker. Reaction number 4 is submissive reaction. When your spouse argues, you do not answer back. You're submissive and meekly listen to the arguments put forth by your spouse. A submissive reaction does not mean that you agree to what your spouse is arguing about. You do not feel like airing your thoughts, as you know that your spouse will never be considerate and understanding. Your yielding reaction does not in any way take away the bitterness you feel about your spouse. Inwardly, you seethe with resentment and anger against your spouse. You feel voiceless. You feel uncared and unloved by your spouse. Yielding to arguments without really agreeing to what your spouse says makes your married life boring and taxing. Reaction number 5 is the call for backup reaction. You do not want your spouse to get away easily for the hurt he or she inflicts on you. You want justice. You feel your parents are the only ones who could help you. You immediately call upon them for support. Your parents love you and so are very prejudiced and biased. They fight with your spouse on your behalf. Unknowingly, you turn your personal fight into a family feud by taking the issue to your parents. A completely immature reaction. Did you see how interestingly different couples' reaction to fights in marriage are? You must react the right way if you want your marriage to survive. When your reactions against your spouse are too heated and hostile, it could end your marriage. When you're sullen and silent, you slowly drift away from each other. When you're too submissive, you will feel jailed and crushed. The best way to react towards the arguments of your spouse is to be constructive. Do not be submissive when your spouse is unreasonable. But never take your fights with your spouse beyond its limit to make your relationship a battlefield. Always fight fair with your spouse. When you fight fair and react reasonably, you easily forget your anger and your married life is back to its normal, friendly track. Did this video make you understand how reactions differ from couple to couple? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage better. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make Until Death Do Us Part your relationship goal.